Hello, and welcome back to the AusCannaPodcast. I'm your host, Christina McMullen, and today's guest is someone who's walked the hard road and decided not to let it end there. Jason Frost is a retired Army Marine, a lived experienced advocate, and a board member of the Pro Patria Centre. After 16 years of service, he was medically discharged in 2015 into a system that offered medications but not answers. Like so many veterans, he faced chronic pain, PTSD, and the feeling of being reduced to a number. What changed everything was medicinal cannabis. It helped him sleep, it helped him reconnect, and it helped him reclaim a sense of self. That personal transformation drove him to help others do the same. Today, Jason helps lead the Pro Patria Centre in Wagga Wagga, a veteran-led hub transforming care through compassion, lived experience, and real-world outcomes, not bureaucracy. We're talking about cannabis, yes, but also about recovery, stigma, mental health, and the power of community. This is one of those conversations that stays with you. Before we dive in, you can submit your rapid-fire questions to AusCannaReviews@gmail.com. If your question gets read on air, I'll send you a goodie pack, so don't forget to include your address. You can also support the podcast directly at buymeacoffee.com/AusCannaPodcast, where you'll find not one, but 2 exclusive storage containers from my cross-collaboration with Canescape. Lastly, you'll want to stick around to the end of this episode because I've got some massive news that I cannot wait to share with you. Anywho, you know how we do around these parts. Lay back, relax, and let's get into it with some of those rapid-fire questions. Here we go. What's the first job you ever had?
First job I ever had was really the military. That's 19 years old I joined, so that was definitely the first job I had. I was a bit of an apprentice before then, but military was definitely my first job and kind of my last job, really.
You know what? That's commitment. Not a lot of people can say that they got their first job and stuck to it. What's your go-to comfort food?
Lamb chops.
Yeah?
From the grill, absolutely. Yep, that or potatoes.
I love a good potato. Military skill that's helped you the most after service.
That would probably be, and again, this is only with hindsight, but I'd say resilience in that. And it's something that I think I lost for a little while, but it's something that when I regained it back and I understood it, it was really helpful in advancing me. So yeah, definitely resilience.
I like that one. If poison is past its expiration date, is it more or less poisonous?
I think it's always poison, so it's probably more poisonous.
Yeah, that's my thought too. More poison. One habit or ritual that helps you reset.
Definitely some breath work and meditation or the right type of plant medicine.
Is your mind a cluttered desktop or an organized filing cabinet?
Oh, very much a cluttered desktop. Absolutely. That's my whole life. That's what I'm trying to fix.
I think a lot of us struggle with that. A book, quote, or film that has stuck with you.
It's hard for me to give a specific quote. I'm probably not good at quotes, but one book that stuck with me and that really helped me on my healing journey in the earlier days was How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. But again, I can't give you a specific quote, but that book really was a bit of a paradigm shift for myself.
I'm not familiar with the book. Can I, it's just a very quick, like, what was it about?
So Michael Pollan's a US journalist, and he's written a few books, and he tells a great story. But he wanted to discover what psychedelics were. So the book actually takes you on his journey of discovery through that, from someone with no idea to go and speak to subject matter experts, to following the history of it until he hits the pinnacle of doing the therapy himself and his takeaways from that with him and his partner. And that book is an absolute incredible journey by a good storyteller.
I was going to say, that sounds like a fabulous book. I'm going to drop that in the show note.
Definitely.
Which is an excellent segue into the next question. First experience with cannabis, was it curiosity, relief, or both?
I I reckon realistically, I had two first experiences. I had my first experience as a young fella where I got high and found that fun and interesting, and it was a bit of an experience there. But then my second first experience was really as an adult, coming out of heavy polypharmacy and then seeking out some cannabis myself. And again, that time was very, very different to the first time. Whereas this second time, I had some, and I slept for the first time in years, and it really gave me a solid reset. So I think I'm lucky to have experienced two very positive first experiences in that, if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense to me, sir, because I was in very much the same basket in the sense that my first, I guess, experience when I was a kid was, early teens, hanging out with friends. I joke all the time. It was Mexican dirt, brickweed, and I didn't know any better, but giggles and good times. And it wasn't until later on in life where I had another experience with it where my father was dying of cancer. He was in hospice and this and that. And I very briefly share the story in another podcast with Tom Forrest. But long story short with it, I was low key getting him high because I was putting weed into his cigarettes. And again, long story short with it, he figured it out. He was a smart guy, but I had some amazing conversations with him and experiences with him towards the end of his life that I 100% don't believe I would have had he not been high. And I think that dramatically changed how I perceived my relationship with cannabis, for sure. For sure.
No, I mean, it is one of those things. I find it fascinating, and it's so true of so many different plant medicines out there. Set and setting is everything, intent is everything, and the way that you utilize it, you can either utilize it for good or for bad, or everything in between of that. So it's incredible to hear, again, similar stories around the place of people, even people having negative experiences with it and then having a positive experience when used right. It is incredible.
It's an incredible plant for sure.
Yeah.
Listener submitted question from Allie in Newtown, Queensland. And she wants to know, would you rather be a cowboy, a samurai, or a pirate?
Definitely a pirate. I spent my whole career on military fast boats, so being out on the ocean, I'm very comfortable. So I'd definitely have something in my blood with that.
Really? See, I would pick the cowboy because he's the only one that's guaranteed to have a pet because he'd have a horse.
Pirates get birds.
True, but birds are sassy, right? And they can get you and they'll rat you out and sell your secrets and sink your ship.
True. And rats, probably.
True. Whereas a horse is your loyal companion.
Hmm.
At least that's what I tell myself. All right. Very last question, Jason. One piece of advice you'd give your 25-year-old self.
One piece. Yeah, stick away from the polypharmacy. That would be some good advice that I would take earlier on. But if I hadn't gone through what I'd gone through, I wouldn't be where I am now. So very hard to give myself advice in the past, I think.
It's true. It's very true. So very quickly, before we get started, I just want to give a quick little shout out to Gavin, Mr. GRizzle. Without him, we would not have met and we would not have had this wonderful podcast. So I just wanted to very quickly say thank you to Gavin for making that happen. That being said, Jason, for those who haven't come across your story before, who don't know anything about you, do you mind kind of walking us through where things started for you?
Yeah, sure. So, again, my name is Jason. I reside down in sunny Wagga Wagga, so regional New South Wales. Um, I spent 16 years in the Australian Army as a Marine specialist, and during that time, I had an incredibly full career, and I met some incredible human beings, worked with some incredible human beings, went to some amazing places. I served that 16 years. The job that I had was quite physical. I spent most of my career on military fast boats within the Special Operations Command. Within that, there's a lot of physicality that comes with that. So I sustained a lot of injuries throughout my career. And by 2020 or 2015, sorry, I was medically discharged. And that was an experience in itself. But I mean, I was really supported through that transition. But what I fell into was a medical system that was treating every chronic disease that I'd accrued with some type of pharmaceutical intervention. And what was kind of projected to me as a lifestyle change ended up being a very dramatic lifestyle change where I went from a highly functional platoon sergeant, very capable human being, to someone who was literally on a bag of polypharmacy every month that I go and pick up from the chemist, and I was dribbling on myself. I put on weight. I think I weighed up about 117 kilos. I started having seizures at night. I lost the ability to speak properly. It put a lot of strain on my family. My wife at the time became my full-time carer. Just everything was getting better. I was having internal bleeding from the high amounts of drugs that I was put on. And every time that I'd go back to a medical professional to get support, I'd get diagnosed with something else. And it just kept compounding and compounding. And I ended up on, I think, I don't know, 12 different medications, maybe more at one time. And it was at that time that I was introduced to some other veterans who'd been through some pretty horrific things themselves, and they were starting to branch out overseas to look at what are some of the other defenses were doing post discharge. And I got introduced to Weeded Warrior, and Weeded Warrior was probably the first group that was set up in Australia to advocate for medicinal cannabis. And one of the founders of Weeded Warrior, Mick Harding, had come back from overseas. He'd been in the States and was introduced to Sue Sisley over there and a lot of the research that they were doing, I think, with the University of Arizona at the time. And back then, this was like 2016, YouTube had a lot of information on it that you could access. In fact, there was some of the university lectures where they were speaking on a lot of these new modalities were available, and you could literally just watch that and kind of learn from the horse's mouth. But a lot of that education got brought back, and that's when I was first introduced to medicinal cannabis. And like I alluded to at the start, my first taste of that ended up in me sleeping for the first time in a very, very long time, and not just passing out. I slept, and I hadn't slept for more than 2 hours in a row for years. So that was a bit of a game changer. But then with I guess the stigma and everything else that comes with that, you're quite isolated in that journey because it's only a few kind of tight-knit people that can really see that. And at that time too, I was actually involved with the local RSL, and me and a heap of other guys had just recently got involved with that. And we started to talk on what was helping us, and things that were helping us was nutrition, it was exercise, it was medicinal cannabis. It was we started to learn about ketosis and about getting the body into a fat burning state, which helps really good with the brain. One of the other lads that I was heavily involved with, and I still am to this day, had pretty severe brain injury from a lot of blast traumas. And he was going down some pathways of looking at these new modalities as well. And I guess as that initial group, we started to learn together and started to seek out what was happening in other areas. And we started to learn about all these different modalities, and we started to try and implement them to our local environment. But unfortunately, it wasn't really, again, because of the stigma and a lot of other things, it wasn't really accepted through our traditional lines of support. So when we went to our Department of Veteran Affairs or we went to our RSL, there was just no real look at anything new that was coming out. And that unfortunately pushed a lot of us away from that, and it put us into further isolation. And then through that, again, it's definitely been a few battles along the way, but again, we realized very quickly that the only way that we were going to get the supports that we needed was to do the supports ourselves. So we started to kind of gather our resources together and look for what we could do in our environment. And I guess, long story short, it led us to being introduced to the Carmelites. So down in Wagga, we've got the Carmelite Monastery, which sits in a suburb that's just outside of the main training base for Australian soldiers, which is Kapuka. And the area where it is was actually home to the families of soldiers during World War II. And the church that we've actually been offered to purchase, or the monastery, was actually built post-Vietnam for returned service personnel. And back then, a lot of the hospitals that were helping people post-service were set up by churches, or they'll set up by monasteries or orders like that, even St. John of God. And a lot of these, the bloodline for these centers now were set up from these areas. So when the sisters found out what we're trying to achieve by drawing in some of those resources to our region, they supported us in purchasing their monastery that they could no longer use. So we raised the funds locally from our local community to purchase the $1.5 million property. And then through that, we had it changed to medical. So we started drawing in medical services that were DVA approved. We then had another grant from the federal government to build workshop facilities to train people in new skill sets and, again, community activities and things. And then beyond that, we've now established a relationship with the Charles Sturt University to, again, fill the gap. So a lot of the research that we're seeing might not be evident in Australia, but now we've got the opportunity to present that research to our academics and get them to peer review or look at a lot of these different modalities and start some new research opportunities for us here. So that's kind of a long story short, but today we've now lucky enough to have the incredible Pro Patria Centre. We're incredibly supported by our community, and we're able to kind of bring in a lot of those new modalities and those new research opportunities for people to start looking at these things a little bit more seriously.
I love the fact that this was like a grassroots thing that was just built from the community up. I love that so much. Jason, looking back, do you think the system saw you as a person or just a patient, just somebody that they needed to just, you presented with whatever issues and we just need to give you whatever drug to deal with it to move on?
Well, even, I mean, I spent a couple of years training recruits at Kapuka. And one of the things that we do when we train a soldier is we try and break away the civilian part of that. And then we create what is fundamentally a soldier, which is a cog in the machine. And that, if you do your job well, everything around you is supported and you're seen as that important part of that machine. When I was medically discharged, I guess you lose that identity of what it actually is to be in defense. And then the overall feeling is that not so much even a patient, but you're a number. You're literally a number. You're a piece. And if you're causing a lot of angst, I guess, or if you're creating a burden, that is incredibly negative to the way that you perceive yourself as well. So I saw myself as a problem. I saw myself as something that was in the way, that I could see it happening around me with my family, that I was making them worse. And when you're in that kind of mindset already that you are disposable, because in defense, you do feel of yourself, and I only speak for myself, but I felt quite disposable in defense, and I was ready to sacrifice everything to be able to do the job that I needed to do. So when that then goes out, when you go outside of that, that doesn't die off. So there was no real self-preservation that existed in me. So seeing myself as a number and seeing myself as a number that was a burden on everything around me, the only clear solution in that is to take yourself out of the equation. And I battled with that for a very, very long time. And I witnessed that around me every day. So yeah, definitely doesn't feel like you're a person. You do feel like not only a used bit of kit, but just a number that is a pain in the ass if you keep putting your hand up for support.
Which is really sad when you stop to think about it, especially for somebody who's served their country, like what you're saying. You disassociate from yourself because you're looking at a bigger picture to do the job that you've, like you said earlier, you signed up for at 19. And it's very, you're right, to advocate for your health care, you have to get loud and you have to be the squeaky wheel. And that's tough when you have to learn how to do that.
And I don't think this is not anything to do with the human beings that are running our Department of Veteran Affairs. It's nothing to do with the human beings that are in our RSLs that are supporting. It's literally, I believe, from the frameworks that we've set up that we need to fit everyone into this box. And my box was PTSD and chronic pain and major depressive disorder. And if I fit into that box, that literally, and we've seen the prescribing algorithms, there's literally, Phoenix Australia holds the guidelines for PTSD treatment. And it literally says drug, 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 until you end up with an entire spreadsheet of pharmaceuticals until electroconvulsive therapies at the very end. And it's like, that's the box we slide into because, and even then I found it very confusing when I'd go to a medical specialist in the condition that I had, and they would literally tell me, we can't fix you. We don't really understand it, but this is the new drug that we're going to try on you. And automatically I feel like I'm at the wrong person if they're telling me that they can't fix me. Where's the hope in that? There's none. That's crazy.
No, I agree when they tell you straight up, we can't fix you, but here you go, take this pill. There's no hope in that. And I think that people need hope. You need hope. Without hope, it's hard to get out of bed every day.
Hopeless is a word for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Was there a particular moment when you realized this is not working? Like, I have to change what I'm doing. Was there like a light bulb moment that happened?
I've had many of them. And I think the first one that I can recall was, one of the kind of key points was I started one of the nerve blocking medications, and I was having conversations with someone, like someone came into my vicinity, and I was speaking to them, and they told me we'd had the same conversation yesterday, and my brain just could not fathom that I'd been in this same situation before. And I realized that my memory was literally getting wiped. And that was one of the first kind of catalysts. Another one was, again, the first time I'd used the cannabis and gone outside and seen outside again and patted my pet for the first time in a long time, and then reconnecting to my daughter through that as well. That was kind of the second key one. And the third really game-changing moment for me was when I finally got brain scans done in 2021. So I had neuro scans, which were QEEG, that actually showed damage in my brain, which was, again, till then it was, we don't know if there's stuff in there, it's all in your head. It's like it physically is in your head when you can see the inflammation that your brain is under and the stress that it's under from impact traumas and everything else that I discounted for so long. That was a big kind of shifting moment for me. Again, it's like getting told, you whinge about your arm being sore, but there's nothing wrong with it when they scan it. That's pretty crazy, but we can now see broken bones in there, and it's the same for the brain. We can now see what's happening in there, and when it's not working, if you don't treat it right, it doesn't like to function right.
Funny how that works, right?
It's very.
Take me back to, you've rediscovered cannabis. And like you're saying, you're starting to get a little bit of sleep now. You went outside, you reconnected with your daughter, you're petting your animals. You're starting to, dare I say, feel a little bit like a normal person again. Did your medical team know you were trying it? Or was this something that you had to like navigate totally privately?
So initially they were very, actually, I was lucky enough to have a psychiatrist in those early days that actually introduced me to medicinal cannabis. And he did this by sliding a card across the table. And that's how I found out about Weeded Warrior. So, and that was nearly under the table because he knew that that was a risk for him to be able to do that. But he could see that I'd needed something different. So again, and other medical professionals that I've had, when I've been open with them, they've been very guarded, but also accepting to watch what happens in those results. But I've had to seek out the doctors. And in 2017, I think I was prescribed from 2018, 2017, I was prescribed cannabis by an incredible doctor. And that got approved through the Department of Veteran Affairs too for chronic pain. So there was, yeah, a lot of hesitancy, and there still is today. And especially with all the negative information that comes out about it, no one's actually talking about the endocannabinoid system and how to utilize this stuff for benefit. It's all just about how bad it can be. So there's still so much misinformation out there and a lack of awareness for a lot of the medicos. But the ones that I have had have been supportive, if not even from afar.
How do you deal with the stigma? Because I mean, I'm sure for you, it's got to be a lot harder than it is. I mean, as a mom, I deal with a lot of stigma, but I don't deal with the Department of Veteran Affairs. I don't deal, you know what I mean? Like, I don't deal with all these extra layers of government. And like you're saying, stigma is heavy when it comes to a plant and it's unreal. How do you deal with it?
I I deal with it better these days than I used to. The way that I used to deal with it was to hide and was to feel like I was doing the wrong thing. And even it's crazy. It would even push me to not use it for periods of time because of that weird belief. And then when I would use it, I'd sit there looking at myself going, dude, what are you doing? Because I am better when I'm using it. My brain works better. And uh, those early days when I was using it was like I was coming out of a fog. It was like literally I'd be in a dark cave and I'd have some and I'd be able to look out of it and be back into myself again. So the stigma these days, I deal with it by speaking about it and not dropping it if it's there, but also in improving myself and being the best version of myself. I think that's the best way to beat the stigma is to prove them wrong. It's like I don't fit the profile of someone who's addicted to drugs or has a drug problem. I fit the profile of someone who's gone through hell and kind of built everything in my world to try and build myself back into a functional human being and a family person again. So I think that speaks for itself. But even then, I mean, not perfect. And I do notice when I do go off the meds, off the cannabis and off my other, again, my nutrition, my exercise, my nootropics and the things that do provide me benefit, I start to get inflamed again and I struggle. And it's the stigma still exists, but I do my best through advocacy and through talking about it, I guess.
I love it. I totally do feel like advocacy is a calling, right? Nobody wakes up and decides they want to fight for something until they've experienced something very dark.
Mm.
And then they see a little bit of light and a little bit of hope. And that hope is what spurs people into advocacy, whether it's something that's happened to you personally, or you've watched your child suffer, or a parent suffer. Something, I hate to say it, something shitty happens.
Mm.
And then you get a little glimmer of hope and you realize that hope is worth fighting for. And that's where advocacy gets born.
Mm.
When you're out there talking to people, do you feel like you're advocating to policymakers, to veterans, the general public? Like who do you feel like you're really advocating to?
Uh, Everyone, I guess, but I guess that the biggest one is our community, our wider community, as in people around us, neighbors, whoever. Because again, I'm not even I wouldn't even say that I advocate for actual cannabis itself, but the knowledge of what it does or how it works. It's I love talking about the endocannabinoid system, the systems within us that are allowing us to function. Like that's I'm about health these days. I'm about my cells and building those cells up to be a better version of themselves. So yeah, it has to be the grassroots. Policymakers are all well and good, but they're still going to revert back to what their policy says. And I've tried that. We've spoken to we've got dozens and dozens of policymakers through the years who when you speak to them face to face, they're like, yeah, that makes absolute sense. And it's crazy. There's like two worlds that exist. There's the real world where I can go and speak to a medical professional, explain what's happening, and they go, yes, that makes sense, but I can't say that. And it's like we're literally in this false dichotomy where the doctors can't be honest. And if they're speaking out on film or they're speaking to another professional, they're at fear of losing their license if they speak the truth. And so we're living in a lie that's not telling us the whole story of what's actually going on. And that's where I find it very frustrating. And that's why I think if people do the research and they look into what might be going wrong with them, there's other modalities that we can use to support them through those journeys rather than just going, no, that doesn't work. And we're not looking at any evidence in that.
Yeah, it's weird, right? The way that they'll like, I remember going to my GP here just recently, and she was like, "Oh, you look really good, blah, 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 blah. What's changed? Da, 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 da." And I deadpan look at her and I'm like, "Girl, I'm 2 years into my medicinal cannabis journey. I haven't had a migraine. I feel this. I feel great." And you could see in her face that she wanted to like acknowledge that I looked good, that I looked healthy, that me 2 years ago was not happy me, right? Like, I would definitely, like what you were saying, I was chunky, I wasn't leaving the house, I was grumpy, I was antisocial, I was all this stuff. And she's looking at me and you can see in her face, she wants to be like, "Yeah, girl, you look good. That plant medicine is agreeing with you." But she won't. She just nodded with it.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a very similar story that happened to me. Is one of my GPs who'd kind of tracked me. He grabbed me kind of late, mid in my piece. I was already on the medicinal cannabis there, and when I first spoke to him, I told him what I was on, and he was pretty mortified at the time, but wanted to do my bloods and just check stuff. Then I started a crazy nutrition thing where I started eating a lot of animal products and vegetables, and I went into like ketosis quite heavily. So that had shocked him. Then I was accepted onto a ketamine program where I did 2 years ketamine infusions, which was groundbreaking for my nervous system and my brain. And that was after I had the brain scans done. And even that, when I explained that, he scoffed. He literally scoffed when I told him I was on this. He was like, "Oh." And then I didn't see him for a while because I'd gone through this journey, and it was maybe a year or so later, I came back in to see him. And the first thing he said to me was, "Oh, Jason, you're looking younger." I went, "Yeah, doc, it's working." And he was like, and then you could see he was kind of torn in what he was seeing and what he was witnessing through that. And again, it's nice to see that, but it's also kind of heartbreaking to see that our medical professionals aren't given the knowledge of what's happening here, and they're still like it. Yeah, I'm watching them get smashed by shorter appointments, more and more people with chronic disease. There's like less and less hope and more disease and everything else. Yet we've got these other things that are happening out here that just not allowed to look at.
It's wild to me too. At the end of the day, cannabis wasn't pushed out because of science. It was pushed out because of prohibition started because of politics and propaganda. Like not because science said to us, "Oh, well, we have these scientific facts and this is a bad plant and blah blah blah." No, no, there was no science that said that. It was literally propaganda and politics that pushed it out. And it's very frustrating that, someone like yourself, someone like me, it's like a whole new world out there with a plant, and yet it's literally like hitting your head up against the wall when you're trying to talk to people about it, and the stigma is heavy, and you're like, "I just don't understand why you're willing to hand me another pill, but you won't entertain that a plant helped me."
No, and if I go down the rabbit hole with it a little bit, and just again, this is my layman perspective of it. I believe it's because we're not focused on health when we go and see the doctor. It's not about health, it's about diagnosing a disease, identifying a symptom, and then giving a pharmacological interaction with that. But that pharmacological interaction is a single synthesized molecule that's gone through a testing method that allows it to be done like that. Whereas when you get a plant that has maybe 200 compounds in it, it's literally impossible to fit that into that model. but and since 2017, we've had now access to a plant in our medicine system, but that plant can't fit into a single synthetic molecule system. You're not even allowed to, I don't think, synthesize THC because that's already been synthesized and patented. So to do it with a plant molecule or to do it with a combination of plant molecules, there's no way for us to fit that in. And I think that's why we hear a lot of policymakers and professionals saying that there's no evidence, because there is evidence, but there's no single molecule synthetic evidence that does this. Whereas we've now got what is there, like, mate, 30,000 papers that have been written on cannabis in the last how many years? So it's probably the most studied plant on earth at the moment. And I'm speaking to the researchers that are doing this. Like, we've got the Lambert Institute in Sydney, which is doing some incredible science on this. There's other trials that are going on around Australia where they're reversing disease. They're doing some incredible things, but because that evidence doesn't fit in with this single molecule model that we're trying to fit in, no one's allowed to look at it. And that to me is incredibly frustrating.
100% I agree. 100% I agree. It is a struggle because it doesn't fit into pharmaceutical drugs. It doesn't. It's like what you're saying. It's not a one molecule mass produced. It's the same. That pill coming off of the line at 7 a.m. is the same as the pill coming off the line at 9 p.m., right? Like, it's a plant. And even on the plant itself, it varies. And that's the other thing. Cannabis has so many subtle nuances that each plant affects people differently. It's very hard to quantify. Like, if you and I both sat down with the same flower, there's a good chance that we might experience that flower differently because our endocannabinoid system is different.
Yep.
And so I understand the science, like, how do you quantify that? How do you put that into pen, paper, write, peer review, and then gold seal stamp of approval? Like, I do understand the struggle there, but on the other side, there's a part of me that's like, all these pharmaceutical drugs, there are so many side effects. Like, you start taking one pill and then you get another side effect and they give you another pill and then you get another side effect and they give you another pill. And then all of a sudden you're walking around with a bag of pills because you have 10 side effects. And I don't understand why something that has very minimal side effects, why wouldn't we embrace that more as a first line medication as opposed to, again, a lot of us are like, well, I've tried X, Y, Z. I know I am at the end of my rope. And that's why I'm trying medicinal cannabis.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is, I mean, we've got some incredible pharmaceutical interventions that have made some incredible impacts on people's lives in a positive way. And that's obviously the talking point, to say you can't say anything negative about it because it does help people. But in that same breath, where now I think Australia's got 50% of Australians now have at least one chronic disease. And that's, I don't know, is that a lot? That seems like a lot to me. So it's nearly like, maybe, I don't know, if I was suspicious and I was a conspiracy theorist, I might ascertain that chronic disease makes money for people and that it's more profitable to treat symptoms of a disease than it is to stop the disease. And I've heard that said many times, and now I'm getting to the point where I'm maybe seeing it. I'm seeing things that can reverse and regenerate, and we've got stem cells, and we've got incredible science on vitamins and what vitamins can do to people and what nutrition can do to people and longevity and everything else. But it's all hidden under this veil of, well, that's not what you can do that yourself kind of thing. It's not really something that they look at as an intervention.
Yeah, I think I struggled a lot with that as a kid growing up, in the sense that I grew up in a big pharma family. My uncle was a hematologist oncologist. My aunt was the clinical coordinator. My mother was the practice manager. We made a lot of money pushing drugs for chemotherapy and whatnot. And I absolutely saw patients coming in, stage 4B, death's door, told, make sure your shit is sorted. You got weeks if you're lucky. And then they end up living for 5 years. I mean, my dad was one of those. So I can't knock big pharma. I definitely do think they have a place, but I also feel like we should embrace some other alternative things, especially when, for me, the reoccurring theme, the more people I talk to, they all say the same thing. no, maybe it didn't quote unquote fix me, but my quality of life came back.
Mm.
And for me, I feel like that's worth fighting for. Quality of life and going back to that need for hope. And if you don't have quality of life and if you don't have hope, what are we fighting for?
Mm. No, and that's it. Is it about medical freedom, the freedom for us to choose our health and how we kind of treat that. And that's where I struggle with it a lot too, is we've got plants around us now, all different types. We've got fungi, we've got weeds, we've got all these different plants that used to be our food that now are restricted to us. And yeah, that's challenging.
Yeah, it's wild to me. It's
Mm.
absolutely wild to me. Slight change of gears. Let's talk about your wonderful center, Pro
Mm.
Place. Talk to me about what were the driving forces behind it and kind of what was missing from traditional veteran services that propelled the center.
So I guess it all kicked off again working with some of my peers who'd been through different areas of defense. And one of the things that I learnt in defense a lot, and we were constantly, if we'd go out and do a job or do an exercise or do some kind of functional activity, afterwards we'd always kind of have an after activity report to see what we can improve on and what we can fix and what we can sustain. When I got out, there was no advancements in this. It was just, no, this is what we've done for the last 100 years or 30 years or 20 years. So there's no need to do anything different. So for us, we could see there was a need to do things very differently. So that's kind of where a lot of that was born out of. And again, this isn't just about things like medicinal cannabis or even psychedelic assisted therapies. It's about generating self-agency and health. And I think as ex-military people, we've got an incredible ability to have self-agency and do things ourselves. So give us the tools to be able to do that, and then we can help support our community. Because for me, service, like I love that I was in service to the country for a very long time. I take a lot of pride in that, and I can't see myself doing anything else. So for me to be able to extend that to my community, because a big kind of waking point for me was realization I've got kids now. I'm not going to be around forever. If I'm going to leave this place, I want to at least leave things a little bit better than they were, not a little bit worse. And I think I was on a pathway to leave things a lot worse when I was at my worst. So having this set up, this will give us the ability to really provide new avenues and prove what works and what doesn't work from the grassroots. But it was also birthed from our wider community. So for the first time, we actually did surveys, and I think we had over 300 respondents just in our region of ex-service personnel that told us what was wrong. So we're not just acting on our own impulses. This is acting on what the needs are of the community, and we have a drastic need to do things differently. Royal Commission was another key point in this as well. This identified a lot of the shortfalls, and we're already acting on a huge percentage of those recommendations as well. So we're really trying to take the initiative and do what needs to be done, and then prove what is working and what's not working.
I love the fact that this is a veteran-led initiative. I love that so much. Um, what services do you guys offer for somebody who's listening, who doesn't really know anything about the center itself?
Yeah, so at the moment on site, we've got a number of services, but we provide access to a number of services through the website that have telehealth and things as well. But at the moment, we've got GP on site who's an incredible general practitioner. One of the first things he does is gets your bloods tested to see what things are missing in you, and then try and boost those things up. And that's vitamins, minerals, metals, all those kind of things. We've got Monarch Mental Health Group, who are one of the key players in a lot of the new psychiatric treatments that are coming out. So the amazing Dr. Ted Cassidy he was a pioneer in transcranial magnetic stimulation in Australia. And this is a big one too, because when this came out, there was not a lot of knowledge on it in Australia, but there's a lot of evidence in the States that came over. When the federal government approved it, and for those who don't know what transcranial magnetic stimulation is, It is using magnets to stimulate some blood flow and activity back into areas that might be a little less active. So that was approved through Department of Veteran Affairs, and then that flowed through to provide enough evidence in Australia for it to then get approved under Medicare. So this is now available. Federal government rolled out millions of dollars to roll this out around Australia. Those guys are now also doing S-ketamine treatments. They're also on the clinical lead for psychedelic assisted therapies. And we had our first combat veteran receive approved psychedelic assisted therapies just recently. And the paradigm shift in him was absolutely groundbreaking. And we're seeing incredible results in this, but it needs to be done properly. And that's the big takeaway. It's not about just going out and trying these things. We've got professionals now that are highly skilled and educated in this that can impart their knowledge and do it in a way that you're going to get the maximum amount of benefit out of it as well. We've also got garden facilities, kitchen facilities, garden to plate program. We're tied into local providers for food that grow their own food, that grow highly nutritious things. We've got our workshops on site where we can teach people skill sets. And again, this comes into that neuroplasticity. When we've got people transitioning, instead of going, hey, go find a job and then get your skill sets to do that job, we can then hand people over a range of different skill sets and get them to start using those skills to see what areas they might want to kind of evolve into. And that also goes in part, 50% of the people that we're supporting are medically discharged. They might not work again. Like, that's how serious some of these injuries are. So giving them hobbies and things to maintain active is also key importance to that as well. So there's a range of different things. That's only some of them. We've got physiotherapists, we've got counseling. And then through our website, we've got access to hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which is inducing stem cells for advanced healing. We're just about to get another mob on that are doing some incredible work with lipid stem cells. So taking stem cells out of your fat tissue and then re-injecting them into areas where you've worn down cartilage. They're seeing great results in that as well. We're working with nutritionists. We're working with researchers as well through academic levels to get people higher education pathways. We're working with groups for initiatives, so small business startups and things like that. Yeah, and that's just off the top of my head.
I was about to say, damn, Jason, what else are you guys doing? I feel like you're doing everything. This is an amazing initiative. If you're like, it's peer support, you're pulling your community together, you're lifting up your brothers and sisters. I freaking love it so much. I do. You guys are doing like from the kitchen. Oh my God. Wow. Wow.
The idea is to do what's needed and bring it into that place, see what works, and provide the proof there.
Wow, like seriously, you're doing so much, and it's amazing what a group of like-minded people can do when they get together. It really is.
No, and it is veteran-led, but it's also community-led. And that was one of the key things that we looked at the start is we don't get out of defense to become veterans. And if we start a veteran organization, that's even more isolating. The idea of us getting out is to transition into our community. So we've set this up really as a community center. So our board members are only partially made up of veterans. They're also made up of members of the wider community. We've got a trust as well, and we've got some legal professionals in there. We've got medical professionals in there. We've got accountants. We've got just kind of your whole array of professional human beings that are a lot more professional than me in a lot of ways. But those guys are what keep us grounded as well. And it's like our pub test as well. It's like I might come up with some pretty crazy ideas. If I can sit down with these guys and explain what's happening in this and they agree and understand that, then it makes it a lot easier to move forward. And they can kind of idiot check me on a lot of things as well, that I don't get too carried away, because that can happen as well. But yeah, just to have that cross section of our wider community involved is what's made the strengths of our center so strong. It's what's really pushed us forward.
Like I said, I love it. I do. I really do. I wish there were more organizations like this across the country.
I honestly think there are. Like, I think there's a lot more popping up, and we're starting to get reached out to by some incredible initiatives, but they've just been operating in silos for so long because the community that we are part of, that veteran community, is so fragmented because of a lot of different reasons. And I'm hoping that we can kind of create a bit of a beacon to bring some of that back together, because it is about connection. It is about, like, again, there's no point doing anything in isolation. You have to share what you're learning for any benefit to kind of come out of that.
I agree. Let's bring it back to you just real quickly before I let you go. How are you doing in your recovery? Because I didn't know you before, and just from this conversation that we've had, you're a very charming individual, sir. You're charismatic, you're full of life. There's life in your face. You know what I mean? There's color in your face. You're very, I say it all the time, you look like a normal, productive member of society. How are
No,
you?
I fooled you well. But no, in all seriousness, I've been very lucky to access a lot of things that have helped me get to this point, and this is why I'm so strong in advocating for it. Because I've seen what I'm like when I'm not like this, and I'm not well. I'm really not well. When my brain is inflamed, when I'm isolated, when I can't communicate, I hit the wall. But now I've done it enough times to know that if I keep my tools, if I access my tools that I have in my belt, that I could build my way back out of it again. And it has been a journey. I'm still not there, and I don't think I'll ever be where I'm trying to get to, which is part of that drive that helps me keep pushing forward. But I'm also waiting for treatment myself. It's like I need to have resets every now and then, because I do spin a lot of plates. I do keep my days as busy as I can, but when I hit the wall hard, and I really do have to pull back. It's very hard for me to find that balance. But again, I nearly feel like in accessing what I'm accessing, it feels like cheating, because for a lot of people, I can't be honest about what I'm accessing. I can't tell them what I'm doing to keep this functionality going. And they also don't see me when I'm at my worst. So it's kind of this catch-22, but I do thank the beautiful humans that I have around me, and I thank the amazing medicines that I'm able to access. And I can't give credit to myself in anything that I've done, because it has all been because of what I've accessed that has allowed me to think the way I think and do what I do.
What's next for you?
Maybe a bit of a break. But no, I think if I keep the ball short, the next big thing we've got is linking in with the university in October. We're bringing in a lot of our key speakers, so a lot of the medicos that are doing some of the amazing stuff, and bringing them all together. And then part of that is we're shooting some footage in that to put together a little bit of a documentary type thing on following some people through these amazing journeys that they're going on, so we can bring some of that to the public as well. Because it is, I mean, these little moments where I get to speak about this are pretty special, that we can share this, but I think we need to share it in bigger ways. We need to show physically what's happening, and some of the bad stuff too. Like, people are going through hell. They really are. And a lot of my mates are going through hell, and they keep me going as well, because I see them not able to access what I can access, and it's devastating. It's like, yes, we have the center, but we're not there yet. We don't have the treatments on site we need on site. We don't have hyperbaric oxygen. We don't have these protocols, even for defense, where the guys are still taking the hard hits, but not getting the treatment they need to build that resilience. So it's until I've got those things in place, then I feel like I can take a breather. But until then, that's what my goal is. And I'm happy to stay on that path. It keeps me moving.
How can people learn more about the center? How can they get in touch? How can they support your cause?
I think the best way is to jump on the website, so propatria.com.au, and on there we've got a mailing list and we've got a news page. That is really our key way to let people know what's happening. We're just about to we've had some again, I'm blessed with the humans that are around me. We've got some new board members that are getting involved who are amazing human beings, and they're going to help us also. Because again, the website at the moment, it's not perfect. It's been built off of something that was very simple that's become quite complex. So our next job is to kind of recalibrate that to make it a lot more obvious on what we're what we're seeing and what we're doing. So through that, again, that newsletter through our news site is probably the best way to support us and keep track, share our stories when we're giving them out. And there's plenty of opportunities there to get involved as well and reach out through the website if there's anything. And again, if people need support, we're happy to kind of give them access to that. But again, every time that we put our name out there and we do something on the mainstream media, we get overwhelmed with people reaching out for help. And this is where it's so apparent that it's needed. So yes, I guess the website's the short answer.
Love it, Jason. I love what you're doing. I love the mission behind the
Pro Patria.
I don't know why I can't say
means for country. So pro for patria, patriot, patria, country. And that wasn't our name either. We actually borrowed that. It's written on the side of the chapel. And it was because the monastery was built, again, post-Vietnam for return service personnel. So when we didn't come up with the name, it was literally gifted to us from the sisters that sold us the property.
It's almost like it was meant to be, sir.
Oh, that's crazy. There's been a lot of them.
That is crazy. I love what you're doing. I love the center. I encourage any of the listeners who are listening to reach out and get involved. Before I let you go, Jason, anything else you want to share with us?
No, just thank you so much for the opportunity to have a chat with you. It has been incredible. And I love what you're doing, being able to have people and the incredible human beings that you've had on that podcast already are just unreal. So to be part of that, I'm very blessed. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for coming on and joining me, sir. It was my pleasure to have you.
And that's a wrap for this season of the AusCannaPodcast. A huge thank you to Jason Frost for sharing not just his insights, but his lived experience and leadership in this space. If something in this conversation resonated with you, especially if you're a veteran or someone navigating the system, please know you're not alone. If you'd like to connect with Jason or learn more about the Pro Patria Centre, you'll find all the links in the show notes. If this episode hit home, I'd love it if you'd leave a 5-star review or share it with someone who might need to hear it. You can also support the show directly at buymeacoffee.com/AusCannaPodcast. A quick follow-up to a previous episode from this season with a fabulous Claude from Cintiqa. They'll be hosting their next in-store device cleaning day at True Leaf Dispensary. So, if you're in Melbourne, check the show notes for the link to grab your tickets for the event on Saturday, August 23rd. All right, now for the big news I teased at the start. Lean in. We're going international. That's right. The AusCannaPodcast is heading across the ditch. Season 4 officially kicks off at the end of September with not 1, but 2 episodes being recorded live on location. Until then, you can catch some of the behind-the-scenes adventures starting next week, August 18th, over on my Instagram at AusCannaReviews. Until we meet again, friends, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen. And remember, life's like a sesh. The more you show up, the smoother it gets.